So I'm here at my 𝐓𝐇 garage for its first service. Not 12 months, it's about 8 months since I've had it, but I'm approaching 10,000 miles. So stay tuned to the end, because you all want to know how much is the first service on an E Niro. So enjoy. So I went to my local 𝐓𝐇 garage in Stromness and reversed into the garage and give a chance to have a good look underneath my E Niro. So we lift the bonnet, do a few visual checks, make sure there's no chafing on any of the cables or the wiring. Of course, everything was absolutely fine. And take off the cover, quite a lot of wasted space. And then check out the 12-volt battery. So put a battery tester on it just to see if it's behaving itself, and it was absolutely fine. And then we just put some silicone grease on top of the terminals, just stop them flaring up. Visual check of the brake fluid and also the coolant, which cools the inverter and the motor. Then it's the all-important screen wash. Pop it up on the lift, and then an important search and check of all the suspension parts. Make sure there's no damage, all the gaiters are fine, all the ball joints are okay, and everything was absolutely tip-top. And whilst he's doing this, he's obviously checking the tyres, because he can spin them whilst it's in the air, check for any undue wear or nails. And I filmed the tread depth as well, and about down to about 2.5 mil. Underneath the car, just check the battery casing, check there's no damage from anything that might have got flung underneath, and also the bolts that secure the pack. Now, I wanted to replace the gear reduction oil. I've read online that quite a few Hyundai Konas and Niros have done this. So this is extra to what Kia recommend. So my garage was only too happy to do that for me. So drop this cover at the front. There's the casing for the gear reduction, and interestingly you'll see that it's got a Hyundai Kia mark on it. They're the fill ports, that's where you fill it and that's where you drain it from. There we go, it's got Hyundai and Kia, because Kia is actually owned by Hyundai. And then gently undo the bottom sump plug, I suppose, to let out the old oil. Now this should be clear, but as owners have reported, it's quite blackened. There we go. Now there wasn't any graphite in it, there was no bits, it's just become blackened. So I think I'll do this every time I have a service, just to keep that gear reduction fine. There isn't a magnet on the sump plug, but there wasn't any bits in it at all. It felt smooth between your fingertips, with gloves on of course. So it takes 1.5 litres of the I think it's 7W gear oil that went in. There's the old oil, there's the new oil going in, just gravity fed. It takes 1.1 litres, and put it until it overfilled out of the fill plug. So there's the old oil and there's the new. So for the sake of a few pounds, it was worth having done. Then pop the cover back on. So this is a bit more of about 10 minutes. But it was good to have a check underneath. Next, take all the wheels off. Yeah. And just to check the brakes. Now, as you all know, because of lack of braking, brake discs on all EVs can suffer from corrosion through lack of use. So here on Orkney we live in a very salty environment, so I always recommend that you have the brakes checked and stripped, as my garage is doing here. So support the caliper, so it doesn't put any undue stress on the lines, and take off all the various clips and springs that make up the front brake discs. Hardly any wear on the brake pads after 10,000 miles. As you can see, they don't fall out, so there's a bit of crud and rubbish in there. Just make sure everything's nice and free and lubricated, And then just a file to file out the channels to get rid of any debris that may have accumulated over the last 10,000 miles. So those channels at the top and the bottom of the brake caliper. Just cleaning up round the hub. This is where the alloy wheel will meet the hub and it can stick. So we clean that up. Clean up the pads. Those grooves need to be nice and clean. So there's free movement of the pad against the brake disc. And then put some silicone grease, some ceramic brake grease rather, on the pad and all the moving parts. There's the anti-rattler springs that basically hold the pad in place. And this is just ensuring that the brake pads have free movement and don't bind either. The last thing I want is binding brakes on my E Niro. Pop everything back. Now interestingly, there are some spring clips that we'll see in a moment that fit in those tiny holes. There we go. Now I didn't know this, but these spring clips actually push the pad away from the disc, which again has got to be a good thing, because if you're not braking you don't want that pad anywhere near the disc itself. So it was good to see them moving quite freely. Pop the caliper back on, tighten up the two bolts that retain it, and repeat the process for the other side, of course. Put some ceramic brake grease just to stop it sticking when you put the alloy wheel back on. This is one of the rear wheels, same principle. It's a thinner disc and there's the electronic handbrake mechanism. But again, same actions are carried out. Just check the inside of the alloy, it doesn't have any rubbish. Torque up the wheels again when the car's back on the ground to the correct torque. Next, it's the pollen filter. I didn't think this would need changing, but I told my garage, I said, look, just order in a Kia pollen filter, which he did. And I was quite surprised. We do have clean air up here on 𝐓𝐾𝐒, in 𝐓𝐾𝐒 should I say. But this is the pollen filter. Maybe it's all the diesel cars I occasionally follow on 𝐓𝐾𝐒, but there's the old one. There's the new one. So I'm glad I changed it, because I don't want to be breathing that stuff in when I'm following a dirty diesel on my travels. Quite a simple task, easier than the Nissan Leaf to be honest. Put clips back in that hold the glove box and put all my stuff back in as well. Next, it's lubricate all the hinges, again with some silicone grease, and also the charge flap door. Want that lubricating, and the little plunger. Some silicone spray grease. And then obviously just check there's no bits of rubbish or stones. We have had a couple of EVs with stones in there that stop it connecting properly. We then just connected up an onboard diagnostic computer just to check for any fault codes. There wasn't any fault codes. And just unplugged it from the onboard diagnostic port. Next, it was just a visual check of all the controls, make sure everything's fine, and check the high and low beam and indicators, just the normal MOT type checks, and check that the windscreen is clearing correctly as well. Finally, it was outside, plugged in the Type 2 fast charge cable. Again, just to check everything was connecting properly and communicating with the car. Out comes the service book, put the date of the service and the miles, and also the invoice number just to cross check so we can prove that the service has been carried out. And then the all important stamp in the book that everybody likes. The question is, how much was it? So I've just had the invoice from my 𝐓𝐇 garage, and before you all scream at me and go, oh, you've not had a Kia service, Jonathan, in Kia's actual book it says, and I'm going to put a screenshot up now, if your Kia car is not serviced by a Kia dealer or authorised repairer, we recommend that the garage completing the service is VAT registered, The service must be carried out correctly as detailed in the owner's manual. Only genuine Kia parts and lubricants as recommended by Kia or equivalent quality must be used. The part numbers used should be detailed on the sales invoice. Oil type, service record must be stamped. So you don't have to go to Kia in order to maintain a warranty with Kia. And they actually state in the book, it's called block exemption. And you can Google it to find out what that is. So I've had it stamped by my 𝐓𝐇 garage in the service book. And I have the invoice here. So let's run through it. So service, carrying out service as per schedule. Pollen filter was £23.92. Screen wash £1.90. The gear oil for the reduction gearbox was £20.47 and £1.21 to dispose of the oil, which is a good thing because there is a cost there for the garage. The labour was £53. The parts came to £47. The subtotal was £101. The VAT was £20.25. So the grand total for my service was £121.50. Please bear in mind that if I was south and took this to Kia, they wouldn't have taken the wheels off, and they most definitely would not have changed their gear reduction oil. So it might have been a lot less than £121. But here on Orkney, we have wind and we have particularly bad salt spray everywhere on the island. And as you saw from the video, that can heavily corrode the brakes, the calipers, and all those moving parts. So I believe it's money well spent to have those brakes stripped down at every service. Because at the end of the day, I want the brakes to work. I know I've got regen braking, but you need the car to be braking properly. And also we don't want those brake pads sticking or binding, because that's going to affect my miles per kilowatt hour. So, you know, that's why I go to my 𝐓𝐇 garage here on Orkney. They will do more than the manufacturer recommends, and I think that's just going to be a good thing from a safety point of view. So there you go. First service was £121, and another 10,000 miles time I will go back, and that's when they do actually recommend a brake fluid change. Now that is based on its what's the word, the quality of the brake fluid, whether it's got moisture content, that's the word, in it, and there's a way of that being measured. So we don't necessarily have to have a brake fluid change if the moisture content is still well within the parameters. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed this to see what's involved in a service on an electric vehicle. But please be aware, it is because we live on an island next to the sea. It just requires a little bit more attention. Anyway, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.